want to take anybody out, they're going to take out the councilman first, so then.
Yeah. We don't have much room here, do we? This is absurd. Wow. Morning. I'm just going to be on a string on your back here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This time we will call this meeting of the Putnam County Area Planning Commission up. First of all, we'll have a roll call. Present.
Here.
Zach Bowers,
Present.
James McKee.
Yeah.
Also present is Tim Inslee, County Attorney and Regional Master Plan Director. Not present is Greg Williams, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you. At this point in time, Andy Beck will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing for a minute. We're going to have a moment of silence for 9/11. Okay, thank you.
Okay, real briefly, can you all hear me back there? No? Okay, I'll speak up. If you all can come up a little further, there's some people standing in the back that can't get in the door. Y'all need to come in and let them get in here. Please and thank you. So now that we've called the meeting to order, and we've taken a roll call determining a quorum, I want to lay out the ground rules. So first, this board is 7 people. There are only 6 here tonight. It's an appointed board. They are not paid. They're volunteers. The Plan Commission, when it comes to zoning cases, is an advisory board. They give a recommendation to the county commissioners. The county commissioners have the final say on this rezoning request. Second, the meeting will begin with the petitioner presenting the project. They will be given 15 minutes to present. The board members will ask questions to the presenter. Once the board has asked their questions, then the hearing will be open to public comment. Everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. Your names will be called from the sign-in sheet. All questions or comments are to be directed to the board, not the petitioners. This is not a town hall style meeting. Once all of those who have signed up to speak have the opportunity to speak, the public portion of the meeting will be closed, meaning that once it is closed, no one from the audience can speak. The petitioner will be allowed to address any questions or concerns raised. The board will then again ask any additional questions. There is a potential that a decision is not made tonight. This board may choose to continue the meeting to allow time to analyze the information before voting. The board could also vote. Again, the vote is only a recommendation to the county commissioners. Thirdly, please be considerate of the one who is speaking. Do not overtalk them. Disorderly conduct will not be tolerated. You will be given a polite warning, and if it continues, you will be politely asked to leave. This meeting is being streamed and recorded. Therefore, each person speaking will be required to come to the podium, speak into the microphones. And lastly, if you could please silent your phones so they do not go off while people are speaking, that would be great. If you need to take a call, please leave the room to do so. If you need to use the restrooms, you need to go out those doors so that we aren't disrupting the meeting as we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. At this time, we will begin with the petitioner for their presentation. That person come forward. Thank you.
My name is Paul Cummings. I grew up in Fillmore and graduated from South Putnam in 1997. Growing up, we had a hog farm. There were 30 sows that had piglets twice a year. We raised the piglets to finished size and then took them to market. It was decent money that helped make ends meet and kept my papaw busy. I loved going to the feed mill, loading pigs, usually, and taking them to the sale barn. It was fun until the market tanked in the 90s. The hogs were kept outside in a dry lot, which was devoid of all vegetation. It looked like the surface of the moon, but it never really smelled that as bad as you would think. Waste management at the time was rain washing manure down to the creek. There was an irresistible attraction to the creek for us boys. The hope of a chance encounter with a snake warranted the walk and braving barbed wire crossings. There was very little wildlife, so most trips came up empty, and it smelled like, you know. I came home from grad school, where I was getting my master's in environmental science. It had been almost 10 years, and I took a walk down to the creek. We sold the last of the hogs 10 years before. The creek was teeming with fish, frogs, turtles, and other wildlife. It was amazing how quickly it bounced back. Given this experience in my degree, I became very excited about conservation. By 2015, it was clear to me that solar costs were coming down quickly, and there would be tens of thousands of acres of solar built to meet our growing energy demands. This would provide the perfect opportunity to have an ecosystem that would provide habitat for all kinds of insects, small mammals, and birds, and allow for food production through sheep. The idea of solar grazing began to take hold in my mind. We moved in 2018, and our new house sat on 20 acres. I fenced in 12 of those acres and began developing our sheep farm, Synovus Ranch. It is a scale model of a solar farm. I move them to fresh pasture every day or two, 365 days a year, no matter how hot, how cold, how much rain, sleet, or snow we have. We're proud to be sheep ranchers. We're developing a 300-acre solar farm directly next to our house, where we plan to have a 600U year-round operation. I worked with my neighbor who was ecstatic to be able to preserve the farmland for his daughter, retire, and get a decent return on the land. We are right in the eye of suburban sprawl, so it is likely that if we can't get the solar farm built, it'll soon be houses. When I walked into the White Oak Farms office, the man's already had a stack of 14 solar lease offers. Clearly, I wasn't the only one who identified this as the perfect spot for solar. Rob was in the back and generally disinterested until he overheard me talking about sheep and solar organic matter. I got my foot in the door. Fortunately, Mrs. Mann, Rob's wife, and my teacher at South Putnam vouched for me, and luckily she didn't remember my calculus grade. We spent the next several months discussing soil health and preserving farm ground as we negotiated the lease. The demands were emphatic that soil organic matter be tested before we started and every 5 years thereafter to ensure that we were protecting the soil. No topsoil, other than driveways, could be moved without consent. They were also clear that drainage had to be maintained. All these provisions were put into the contract. The hardest bargain was regarding decommissioning. They pushed for it, and finally I was able to get approved a 100% decommissioning bond at the start of construction. They were not willing to accept any risk that the project would be abandoned. We spent countless hours discussing my favorite topic, solar grazing. Given the experience in cattle and pigs, this made sense to them. Having the land permanently covered would increase soil organic matter over time, and adding sheep would supercharge the system and create extremely fertile soils over the next 30 years while still producing food. This was attractive given the next generation coming of age and wanting to stay on the farm. I had every confidence they could make the grazing work, so we put commitments into the contract that 4-leaf would be grazed. After hammering through every single detail, we were able to come to an agreement that would protect the farm and the community. Now that we had the land lease, I needed help with neighbor and community outreach. The first person that I thought of for advice was my friend, Emily Knuth, so I invited her to lunch.
No tax abatement. Those 3 words stuck with me from my lunch with Paul. I followed the Cold Spring project in northern Putnam County enough to know that the developers sought and received a tax abatement. That didn't sit well and ultimately played into the decision for it to be turned down. So when I heard no tax abatement with the 4-leaf project, I asked Paul to put that into dollars and cents. His answer, $2.4 million per year, every year for 30 years. That's $72 million invested directly into Putnam County. At that moment, I knew I had to do my part to help make this happen. I'm 7th generation member of the Jones family. Our homestead is the big white house next to the Putnam County Hospital. My great-grandparents, Thad and Clara Jones, farmed there. My grandfather was born in that house. My family still lives on Jones Road, and we've always been deeply involved in the life of this county. Clara, my great-grandmother, a Republican, was the first woman elected to county office. Before I accepted this role with Energy Re, I sat down with my parents to weigh the pros and cons. My dad reminded me of our family's history of taking on tough projects for the county's future. In 1978, my grandfather, Charlie, donated the land to move the hospital to its current location on US 231. At that time, there were objections and plenty of pushback. But today, no one questions the wisdom of the decision. The hospital has provided decades of benefits that far exceed what anyone could have imagined. The 4-leaf solar project is that same watershed moment. It's about economic stability, regenerative farming, ensuring that future generations of Putnam County have the education, resources, and opportunities that they deserve. Our commitment to paying full taxes was going along smoothly until earlier this year in the state's legislative session. The House and the Senate passed, and then the governor signed, what's called Senate Enrolled Act 1. This is a major change to the property tax code. One key aspect of the new law is that it reduces business personal property taxes, and it is leading to some big holes in the county and school budgets. What it means for solar farms is that after year 5, we would only pay property taxes on the land and not on the solar farm equipment. This means that our roughly $2.4 million in taxes after year 5 would be reduced to $400,000, the taxes on the land. While this is not the promise that we made to the community. We are committing $2.4 million per year. Since this is a brand new tax environment, we had to come up with a brand new way to deliver on our promise. We have executed a donor-advised fund with the Putnam County Community Foundation that will serve as our vehicle to keep that promise. We're committing tonight within our rezone request that the total taxes and community donations will be $2.4 million annually. That's $72 million over 30 years. That's our way of fulfilling our commitment to pay our fair share. Now I'd like to talk about our engagement with Four Leaf Neighbors. This is our community, so being a good neighbor is very important to us. We sent our first neighbor letter in October of 2024 to invite questions and engagement with the project. We offered the 100-plus neighbors within a quarter mile the opportunity to come speak with us at our Greencastle office. We sent letters roughly every 6 weeks, 8 in total, keeping folks informed on the project, solar education opportunities, and other ways to meet with us. Our most recent letter was sent on August 18th, and it informed the neighbors about this meeting tonight. In addition to the letters and in-person meetings, we had a booth set up for 8 nights at the Putnam County Fair and a booth at First Fridays. Many neighbors met with us and expressed their thoughts about the projects, and we appreciate their time. There were many questions. Most were easily answered in the moment, such as what happens if we go bankrupt? The answer, we will enter into a bond to cover 100% of the estimated decommissioning costs before construction starts. Once operational, we will have an engineer rerun the numbers every 5 years so that we account for the changing costs. Another question, will the panels leach harmful chemicals into the soil or pollute the water? No, solar is safe, and panels are designed to not pollute the environment. We would like to take a moment to take a deep dive into three key questions that seem to be at the center for some neighbors. Number 1, what's the benefit to the community? Number 2, will this project reduce property values? And number 3, will this project take good farm ground out of production? Paul will address these 3 questions.
Question 1, what is the benefit to the community? The community benefit is a key reason why I wanted to do the project. Through the years, we've seen solar host communities set themselves up for long-term success. We are able to commit to $2.4 million annually, $72 million over 30 years coming into the county as taxes or payments to the Community Foundation. These dollars help schools operate, make improvements, and hopefully pay teachers what they deserve. The county can use the money for any number of projects in addition to making sure roads and bridges are kept in good order. There are other benefits like construction jobs, a few long-term jobs, money spent in the community, fresh land, etc., which all add up. But the clear benefit is the cash payment, particularly as we look to help fill the gaps the change in tax law created. Question number 2, will this project reduce property values? The biggest concern for most neighbors is, what will this do to my property value? Rightfully so. For most folks, their home is their largest asset. Why should I take a loss for my neighbors to make a gain? I think this is a reasonable position to take and to demand answers. A study performed by Cohn Resnick, a top accounting firm, provides those answers. They analyzed homes sold adjacent to various solar farms in the Midwest versus comparable homes in the same areas but not near the solar farms. Across the 11 projects analyzed, the difference between the homes sold near solar farms versus comparable homes not near solar farms ranged from -2.5% up to positive 21.5%, with an average of roughly 2% positive difference from homes not near solar farms. The study states that no consistent negative impact has occurred to adjacent property values that could be attributed to proximity to the adjacent solar farm. As Emily described earlier, we have been reaching out to neighbors for the past 11 months and are offering a neighbor agreement. We've worked hard and have signed 20 neighbors so far and expect many, many more to come on once we've gained approval. We will continue offering neighbor agreements until the start of construction. This agreement pays $2,000 per year for homes within 500 feet of the solar farm and $1,000 per year for those within 1,000 feet. This is meant to compensate neighbors for any inconvenience they may experience during the life of the solar farm. We want to make sure that we're being a good neighbor throughout the life of the project. Question number 3, my favorite. Will this project take good farm ground out of production? One of the goals of the Putnam County Comprehensive Plan, which, by the way, won the 2024 Local Government Cooperation Award, congratulations, is to support development of renewable energy production facilities while ensuring they do not compromise the character of Putnam County. Four-leaf proves that renewable energy and agricultural heritage can thrive side by side. By integrating livestock grazing into the project, we can maintain the character of Putnam County and create new opportunities for young people, like my children, to enter agriculture and revive practices our grandfathers would recognize. We want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. My hope is that we can come together as a community and support what will be one of the largest investments ever in Putnam County. We are requesting a positive recommendation of the rezone from this board. We will meet all requirements outlined in the ordinance when we submit our detailed site plan. We believe our application materials, written testimony, and tonight's oral testimony provide sufficient evidence for the rezone and satisfy the decision criteria outlined in the county's zoning ordinance for this rezone request. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Is there anybody else with the petitioner for a presentation? We done with this part now? Okay. At this point in time, we will open up the conversation for the board members to ask questions to the petitioner. Jen, anything you'd like to ask? Kate?
I saw the picture of your buffer. Okay. I saw the picture of your buffer plan. How is that landscape going to be cared for?
That's an excellent question. We're going to plant those trees. They're going to be native trees, and so they'll go in more as a native planting, and they'll grow up, and we'll keep track of them and make sure that if one dies, it'll be replaced.
How often, my question is because this is something that I've heard from the community and just around, and I'm sure that you have too. How soon, when that senescence happens, will that tree be replaced?
I think that would be something that we would want to work together with the community on to put into the final plan, and that would be something that would be a part of our detailed submission to the plan director.
We also are planning to have a site manager on staff and 4 other positions that are helping with site maintenance. So there'll be 5 total positions helping to care for solar and the buffer yards.
Okay, it's a lot longer, especially when you're trying to establish trees. So that was a big reason for my question. Do you know what kind of native trees you're planning on using? Just so that I can get a visual of what their growth rate would be.
Yeah, I think we would be looking at several different varieties of trees. One that I'm very interested in is persimmons. I think that provides for excellent forage for the livestock. Then you've got honey locust, which particularly thornless honey locust, which drops the pods. And then any other sort of trees, we might supplement with trees that grow quickly to get shade quickly, like tulip poplar, not great for the forage as much. But the trees along that line, then several other native species. You could even put apples in there. The final plan will be something that we'll work on more diligently, but that's the high level thought right now.
Okay, wow, a honey locust. I'm curious about that because I've always heard that the seeds within the pod that they have arsenic in them. I'm just for a livestock purpose that they're not good for livestock. So they are. It's okay.
Yeah. So actually, this is a fun story. I went up to Purdue to meet a buddy of mine, Doug Gotham, who was the former head of the State Utility Forecasting Group. He said, "Paul, you keep talking about all these honey locust trees. come on up here, I've got one in my yard. So we went up, scooped up 100 pounds of them, and we dried them out and fed them to the sheep all winter, and none of them died. So I guess that's a positive result from the test.
And we all know that sheep are born trying to find a way to die, aren't they?
That's their immediate thought, yes. No, we actually have pretty good luck with them, but that is their reputation.
So when you plant the native trees, how large are they gonna be when you plant them? We've all heard the horror stories, right, of, oh, here's a sapling that is 1 foot tall, and then we're talking about 20 years before it even becomes viable to maybe hide some of that people don't wanna see.
Sure, and I think that the silvopasture is not going to be like from the beginning, don't view it as like a dense wall. It's more set up as an agricultural practice. So we will go out there with tree tubes, plant, and these are things that are up for negotiation, but generally what you would be looking at is a 2-year-old sapling, something that's maybe that tall, and it'll put on a couple feet of growth per year is sort of the average. The persimmons in my front yard we planted in 24, they're kind of averaging about here to here now. Something like sycamore that we planted 3 years ago is about 15 feet now. So it moves quickly, and those things are something that we'd like to get community thoughts on as well. We're always open to that, particularly person by person. That is something that's malleable.
So you would be willing to even put some sort of an evergreen wall, if you will, to make
We would definitely look at that. I was putting forth the thing I wanted to see, which is promoting silvopasture and this agricultural practice, because I view solar as silvopasture, and then taking that to the next step to kind of further that idea and move that along. But if it's important to specific neighbors, for sure we would do that.
I have some more. Am I allowed to, I mean, can you come back or should I just keep going? Okay. Okay, I also have another question about sheep grazing.
Love it.
I know. I unfortunately have sheep, thanks to my daughter. But we have 7 animals on our roughly 2.5 acre pasture, and they can eat it down pretty quickly. So I've heard numbers of 3,000 to 4,000 being thrown around. Is that enough pasture to support all 3,000? Or how are those pastures going to be rotated?
Yeah.
More information about that.
Yeah, for sure. So we will eventually put together a grazing plan specifically once we get details about where individual rows are going to go, because the fencing matters. But it's the 2,000 acres that will be sort of on the interior fence will be subdivided. And that could be broken into multiple individual farms. But I like to have at least 30 paddocks for the sheep. It'll probably be way more than that, actually. But let's say if you've got, it's easier for me to think of the one at my house. So let's do the 300-acre solar farm behind there. We were actually going to do 60 paddocks there. And then they would be moved every day. And that, if you take 2 ewes to the acre and their lambs and then raise them up through the year, you generally don't have to supplement too much in the winter. You might, by February, it just depends on the fall. We get a fall like this where we've not gotten any rain, and I don't know how my winter stockpile is going to look. And so I might be buying some hay. But if you get a good fall, a good October, and you have a good stockpile, then you have a really good shot at getting through the winter and maybe not feeding hay at all.
Okay.
That's the goal. Now, that may not be the production that happens on, there's other ways to do it, but that is one way that is a really good way to do it. You can bring them inside in the winter, and then the numbers would be slightly bigger to hit the stocking rates. But if you do year-round grazing, those numbers keep the weeds and grass in check. There will still be mowing every year or two.
Right. Just because a solar farm that I'm very close to, they have to mow it a lot. But, so this is why I was asking about the pasture grasses, because when when I go out and look at the plants that are growing within the solar, it's not what I would call great quality grass. So, how did you keep those pastures still going, knowing that really with hay, you're supposed to reseed, what is it, every 3 to 5 years? I mean, are you gonna be able to do that?
Yeah, those are a lot of really good questions. So you want to start off with establishing vegetation beforehand, and we have built into our lease what we call the pre-construction soil retention portion of the lease. We haven't ever said that publicly, but it's where we have the option to pay a different rate than just the development rate. So we take it out of production, and we can establish those forages the year before with a cover crop. I think Chris has a very excellent plan he's told me about, so that's really good as well. That way you can get forage growing quickly and pull get the roots good and strong for once to take the impact of construction, because the last thing we want to do is soil compaction and erosion. That's the things that, mud on the roads is probably the things that makes neighbors the maddest once it gets going. So that's the last thing I want is mud on the roads. So by establishing those grasses early, you can get that done. So it would be, what I would propose, and there's no definitives yet, but I would pick the Fuzz and Buzz mixture from Ernst Seeds. It may go with the premium, or maybe we stick with the regular, I don't know. We'll see how cost goes. But they have a lot of, there's some grasses and clover in there, several clover species, and then also some flowering species. Trying to remember off the top of my head, I think for sure Black Eye Susan's in there because that's cheap, and that helps. That's one of the ones that help. So that will go in. Now, as far as as you go along, if you accidentally overgraze and you get a wet spring like this, we had common ragweed grow in. And I actually did an experiment where we let a pasture sit for 90 days in the common ragweed. I'm mowing it now. That was a bad experiment. But as long as you keep it down and let the sheep graze it, they will eat common ragweed until it gets to about this high, and they'll still eat it. And then some other things like ironweed is a weed that's going to be one that's going to be difficult to maintain, but it's also really important for fall pollinators. So it's one of those where I let it senesce before we mow it. But then if you get worse than that, then you might have to do a little bit of reseeding, which you can do with a broadcast seeder. Frost seeding is really a good way to handle that in the March time period.
My sheep need to learn from yours because they will not eat ragweed.
Giant ragweed or common? Well, we got those Catons. They're not very picky. These girls love it out there. They'll eat about anything.
Well, that was going to be another question I was going to ask is what species or what breed?
Yeah.
So Catons will be it?
Well, it could be any breed, but Caton is the breed that I'm for. So I'll go on record with that.
Okay, and the sheep themselves, are those going to be raised to market weight and then sold, or are you selling lambs? What are you doing with that?
I think there's a lot of production methods and ideas that could occur. It may be 1 year that you have to keep all the ram lambs. This is going to blow people's minds, but as fast as it gets built, you may have a herd of 1,000 rams out there grazing because they're more valuable as lawnmowers than they are as meat. But for the most part, when you think about it long term, I'm a simple man. You heard me talk about we farrowed to finished when I was growing up. So I like having the ewes and raising the lambs to market size, which is this time of year. They're about, the biggest ones are 70 pounds now. They don't grow fast because we don't feed them any grain. On our test site, we just give them grass because we don't want to be hauling grain out to the solar farm necessarily. So they don't get huge, but they're born in May to hit the time when the forage is at its peak. So they're not born in the middle of winter like a 4-H critter would be.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the difference.
That was my next question.
Yep.
What?
And you can lay them out on the solar farm, or you could choose to do it in a barn depending on what you would want to do.
Okay. I also saw in a couple of the letters that some vegetable production was being talked about. Which by the way, I think is a fantastic type of a project just to study what vegetables and fruits can be grown there. However, because it would be classified as natural resources, are there any natives? Because you can really only plant native grasses and native plants in there, are there any native vegetables and fruits that can be used?
No, I think that, so I guess I don't understand. I'm under none of, so when we plant the seed mix, that wouldn't be native species necessarily. They'd be naturalized. But as far as those other things, I don't think there's any restriction on growing. I think they're looking right now as a point of clarity.
It states that, that they really want for you to put native species in there.
I think there's a preference for that, particularly if you're doing any pollinator. So if you went the pollinator route, of course you'd want to go more natives. Are you guys looking for that as a point of clarity?
Vegetation requirements, perennial vegetated ground cover must be planted, established, and maintained around and under solar panels and within any required landscape buffers. Pollinator vegetation covered is encouraged.
Yep, is encouraged. I think, so what we've done in the lease is we carved out a specific area, and if I'm remembering right, it was 30 acres or so. I think it was 30 acres that the landowners were able to do any sort of venture that they wanted. And they've got folks that just came back from Purdue, you'll hear about here in a little bit, who are very excited about automation and doing some of those things out there. So there's a thought to be on the leading edge of agrivoltaics and having that, and we agreed to it. We didn't agree to it across the whole thing because you don't know, like, will pumpkins work across the whole project, but certainly there's a level of excitement there to be able to investigate those things.
Okay, for clarification, and natural resources, agricultural uses animal-related, agricultural uses non-animal related, and nurseries or greenhouses are allowed, so they could do non-animal related crops without having those restrictions in native, because it's agricultural uses.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, another one that I had, and once again, I'm just going off of the experience that I have with a field that I work close to.
Yes, and we apologize for the way that it wasn't us that did it, but I understand what you've gone through, and I don't like how that went, just to put that on record. So,
Thank you, because it's been a time.
yeah, I understand.
So when I was in college, I worked for Indiana Crop Improvement, and I would go scout fields for all kinds of things. So I scouted. We had three different fields. We had one that was directly behind the current solar field. We had another one that was back, like, around a wooded area, and then we had another one over on the other side of my business. I was able to feel a very large increase in ambient temperature when I was closer to those solar panels compared to the others, to the other two fields that I scouted. And it wasn't just once, like, I went back out several times. So have panels changed in the last 10 years? Am I going to experience that same ambient temperature increase?
Well, you won't, because you won't be allowed to come into except for on visits to the solar farm. So.
Oh, no, I don't enter the solar farm.
You can feel it just closely.
Yes, I can feel it emanating from the field.
Okay, well, that's better. There's not, so you're kind of referring to like a heat island effect. The panels do get hot, right? They get smoking hot because they're absorbing the sunlight, and then at night they cool down. When you get kind of close to them, you can feel a little warmth. I've been close. I didn't feel it as much as like what you're talking about, so I don't know measurably, but there's no appreciable mass to the solar farms, so you're not going to have like this, when you think of it with a city where you could see a degree or two rise, you won't have that persistent thing, but if you are close, it's sort of like being in the shade versus being not in the shade, right? It's a similar sort of thing.
Okay. I was really excited too. I know this is a lot. I read a lot. Okay, so I was really excited when I got your binder and I was reading through and I saw that there was a section that was dedicated to wildlife, because that's something that I really enjoy about Putnam County. I mean, every morning when I'm driving to work, I see 3 spotted fawns right now that are playing over in the field. I then was kind of disappointed because the only paper that I saw in there is that there aren't any endangered or threatened species in the area. So my question then is what happens to all of the larger animals? Because it's got to move somewhere. And I'm having a hard time envisioning where they're going to move, if that makes sense. We have a lot of bats at our house, and I've read a lot of studies that say that the bats don't do well around the solar field. So how is that all going to work?
Yeah, and we'll get to that here at the end during our rebuttal period in more detail. But we've noticed this comment come up quite a bit in social media. And here, folks, you know, from my perspective, it feels to me like we're taking farm ground, which is not got a lot of active critters out there, and we're making a lot of habitat for things, particularly insects. I mean, I see butterflies just about get knocked over by them, those sorts of things. Small mammals are going to have a field day out there. And then, of course, then the raptors are going to come in to eat those small critters for sure. Coyotes generally are not welcome within the solar farm. That's a large mammal that would be in the same bucket that you're talking about. I think you're really talking about deer and coyote as the 2 primary large mammals that would be excluded from the solar farms. So with that, I think generally coyote's not as charismatic. People don't love it as much. I do like them, believe it or not, as a sheep farmer. I think we dedicate habitat for them so they have rabbits that they're able to eat because they're important members of the ecosystem. And then deer, you know, they will be able to jump up and over the exterior fence around the edge. So we're planning to do a double fence, the high tensile fence towards the road, and then the interior will be more of an ag style, but 6 feet tall. So a deer is not likely to be able to hop over that. They will have some habitat along the edge that wasn't habitat before. I think one thing that you're pointing at and thinking about is winter food, right? There's not going to be I think you're estimating 1-2% losses on grain. So if you got 200 bushels yield on an acre, that's 2 bushels to the acre. That's a lot of feed for deer. But that is one thing that's probably going to be slightly different. I think there's still plenty of other fields that they can get to. That being said, we don't want to take that concern, particularly around deer, lightly. So we've made new commitments. It's in your folder there. We've added new commitments to do a wildlife study, particularly looking at just a wildlife study generally, and then trying to mitigate some of those impacts. That's a new commitment that we added after hearing some of the concerns recently about deer specifically.
Okay, and the bats. Here's why I asked. I don't like ticks and I don't like mosquitoes. And right now I can go.
Who does? I think that's one thing that would pull pretty low.
My daughter got Lyme disease this year. It was terrible. And another friend of mine just experienced a death in the family due to West Nile. So we have done everything that we can in order to keep that particular species there, because then we don't have to spray anything. They take care of all the matter. I can go sit on my back porch and I don't have to worry about getting all bit up. How are those going to do?
So for bats, we didn't call them out particularly in there, but we just said a wildlife study. One of my really good friends is a bat biologist, and there's nothing more with the wind turbines not being built as much. That's what he did, was go out and literally look for dead bats. Well, he didn't. He had people that did, so I think he could use the work, and I think he'd be excited to do a bat study. I think what we'll find is, given the vast difference in insects, particularly the insects that bats like to eat, that we should see. But I'm an ecologist, not a biologist, so I don't want to guess. But we would look at that in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm a big bat fan too.
They're great, aren't they?
Yeah.
Unless they're in your house. That's not
Well, that's funny.
The they've never been in my house, so. Has your company finished any solar fields of this size? Just when I go look at the website, I was having trouble finding some that have been finished, pictures of those. I just wanted to see what it was gonna look like.
Yeah, no, we have not finished one of this size yet. We have some in the hopper that are this size. Our management team all came from EDP Renewables, which is probably the largest, they are the largest operator in Indiana. And we built a project 2/3 this size. It was the one that we looked at for the property value study in Randolph County. That's called River Start. And subsequently, and I put that into the queue and signed the land and so forth. Subsequently, there's several other projects been developed there. I'm doing the math in my head. I think there's like 400 or 500 megawatts in Randolph County, and there's several projects in White County that EDPR has put together. And our CEO, our COO, and our CFO all came from there. So while we haven't built them as a company yet, we're a startup, we're only 4 or 5 years old, we have that experience in-house.
Okay, oh, that's good. The good neighbor agreement. First of all, I appreciate that, that the good neighbor agreements have been offered. I really do appreciate that because I feel like you do want to be a partner. I was concerned for this particular statement. In no event shall any party be liable to the other party for any special punitive, exemplary, indirect, or consequential damages arising out of or in connection with this agreement, except the extent arising out of fraud, gross negligence, or willful misconduct or third-party indemnity claims. So does that mean that if somebody signed the good neighbor agreement and their property becomes damaged, God forbid we have a tornado or something come through and pieces of the panels come over and do damage to their houses, does that mean that they will not be made whole?
I'm going to turn to Kyle. He's reading it right now to let him answer that. He's our attorney, because that is something that's in attorney speak, and it is mostly to limit our liability there and on both sides, but he can tell us better.
Yeah, good evening. Kyle Ressateras with Denton's, 10 West Market Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. Thanks for your time and great question here. I am reading the provision. Just want to make sure 7.33, is that the provision you're reading from?
Hold on, I've got a lot of things up here.
I think it's on page 26.
On page 26?
26, great. Yeah, we're reading that same provision. So that provision makes clear that the compensation paid to the damaged party would be their actual damages. So their actual damages with respect to property or otherwise, as opposed to the list of additional damages being special, punitive, exemplary, indirect, or consequential damages. Those get into a broader, more subjective view on damages. And so very standard for an agreement for this to include a demarcation there so that it's at the actual damages. So say there's an actual piece of property, let's take a barn, for example, that's damage. It would be the actual damages to repair that facility. So either damaged party would be made whole. The exclusion there, which I think is important, is that to the extent that any of those additional damages would be the result of any bad actor, fraud, let's see, we've got gross negligence, so a higher standard of negligence, or anything on purpose, which is that phrase, willful misconduct. And so that would be the exclusion, where there'd be sort of a larger bucket of damages above and beyond the actual damages.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So, so especially since you were talking about punitive damages, so is that the reason why there wouldn't be a trial by jury should anything come about, and why it would be a bench trial?
Yeah, so the waiver of the jury trial has really become fairly standard in contracts like this. It's the same provision that would be included in likely in the landowner lease there. And the reason for that is to make sure that a judge, which would be the party sort of most educated on interpreting contractual relationships between landowners and the project, or neighbors in the project, would be able to be the party adjudicating the matter, judging the matter, and deciding the case on the merits, rather than it being tried before a jury. Hopefully you want the lawyer to sit down now. But I can come back anytime.
That's all the lawyer questions I have for now. Do I reserve the right to ask more questions later? I've taken up a lot of time. Okay.
That's what we're here for.
I know. Okay. I do need to get a sip of water, so if somebody else wants to ask them, then.
Good evening. My first question to you is on the road usage. Okay, I am the county commissioner, and on Sunday afternoon, I went and drove all the roads that will encompass this solar farm. And when I got done, I measured the mileage. It's 18.1 miles of road. And my wife was riding with me, so I kept track of how many bridges, how many culverts that we crossed. And it was 41 in 18.1 miles. My concern of it is on the heavy equipment coming in, going out. And usually, like right now, we're putting a brand new bridge in on 1000 South, which some of these farmers around here are probably not too happy not being able to use it right now, but they're getting a new bridge. So my question is to you is, right now that bridge is costing us $175,000, okay? All right, and to redo a brand new blacktop road is $200,000 a mile. If we have it hired done by like Milestone or something like that, and if the county does it, it's $107,000 a mile. All right, so what do you, if it goes through or whatever, so what's your plans on, are you going to put the money up front and put it in an account, or what's your guys' plan on the road usage?
Yeah, we'll be negotiating a road use agreement with the county once we go for our permit. So if we get approved here for the rezone, then it's essentially it's a permitted process. But a part of that is that we have to have a road use agreement. So with the road use agreement, we'll have an engineer come out and they'll take a look at the solar farm, say how many loads is this going to be, which direction are they going to come from, and honestly, this is an area that we want to spend a lot of time on and think about, like, should we be doing one-way traffic in certain ways for safety? So we want to be very detailed about that road use agreement and put extra effort into it when we're thinking about it. But the engineer will look at the loads and they'll calculate what's called, I forgot, I haven't seen one in a while, but it's like T-cells. It's like a loading equivalent number that they do, and each road is designed for a certain number of trucks to go over it over a period of time and a certain number of weight, and each bridge is the same. And we would inventory the bridges. They will often do cores to understand, like, how, with your permission of course, how good a shape the bridge is in, can we take loads across this bridge, et cetera, making sure that we're not putting things in a worse position. Now, during construction, it may get to be a worse condition than it is currently, but a big part of this is that at the end of construction, it'll all be put back better than it was, at least as good as it was, if not better. Generally speaking, in Randolph County, the roads got a little bit wider and they went in better. Now, a lot of those early things were wind farms, and those have super heavy loads, so they really, with concrete, right? But the panels, all the trucks, all the panels that are going to be coming in with all those different trucks, those are fairly light loads that are going to be, I mean, they're not light, but they're lighter than a full semi of grain. So, but there is for the transformer at the substation, that's going to be a heavier load that we'll have to really think about. That's the one load. So it's, I mean, not that we're talking about wind farms here, but it's not as hard on the roads as that. We'll be bringing them in, and we'll put it all back in the agreement to how it was before. Oh, yeah, and it will identify all the roads used. We may want to not use some of the roads that you drove because of the condition that they're in. And there may be bridges that just can't handle it without replacing the bridge. So that'll be a part of the study.
Okay. Now, I've read your book. As you can see, I got it all bookmarked. But this is where my questions come from. On the jobs, you said the project will be under construction for 18 months, correct? Okay. How many workers will you employ to put this project in?
The quick answer is about 1,200 jobs, but it could be, it'll ramp up and ramp down, right? So
Okay.
you'll have folks there, just a few folks there at the beginning getting things going, and then at peak construction. But that's the rough number, what we're thinking, folks at the peak.
Okay, and also in here it says that you state 50% of the labor will be from out-of-state contractors, 94% of the supplies will come from out-of-state, 100% of the engineering and professional work will come from out of the state of Indiana. And then then my question to you is, why do you not wish to support our local workers or our state workers by hiring someone from within Indiana to complete the work?
Yeah. I think that's an excellent question. Generally speaking, what happens with solar farms is folks who get good at this, they move from solar farm to solar farm. And when we contract with folks, we might contract with one EPC contractor, right, who has a crew that just worked in Illinois. Some of those guys are from Illinois. I think having those trained folks and doing the right job gives us the flexibility. But yeah, that's just generally the way that works. Now, if folks want jobs at the site, they can show up and it's likely they will get them because they're always looking for workers. But agreeing to 100% of the workers on the solar farm, I don't know as if we have enough folks in Putnam County that would want to do, like 1,200 people that would actively want a short-term job. Yeah, yeah.
So one thing that I want to work on once we get through this process, I've been in touch with ETA International. I don't know if you're familiar with their company here in town or in Greencastle. They are the #1 certifier for solar to help people learn how to install solar. They have people come in from all over the country. I've met with them a couple of times. I've talked with Area 30 and also Ivy Tech on maybe finding ways to put a program together to get people locally trained and so that they can work on the site. That is together as it is at this moment because we've been working on this, but I've at least had some conversations, and that's the kind of thing I like to try to put together and would like to do so that we could have people trained here locally so they could work on the farm.
Okay, thank you. My next set is on from the UDO. The UDO states that you only need 50 feet away from the residential property. Why do you choose to make it 250?
Yeah, we just feel like that's being a good neighbor, right? We didn't feel like, well, it's not, we're not going 50 feet from a residential. We're saying we're going to do 250 feet from a residence. The 50 feet from a residential parcel could be like at a different part of the parcel, like the backside of a parcel or an 80-acre parcel. So specifically, the home setback is 100 feet from a home, and we're increasing that to 250 feet just to give a little more space for buffer. Some of these silvopasture things that would give you a little more screening. We just thought it would be a nice gesture to move it back and have more vegetation in there.
And also in your good neighbor agreement where I read was, it said in the good neighbor agreements, there are categories for payments. The dollar amount decreases when it hits 250 feet. So what makes it change for that for you?
You got to pick a number somewhere, to be honest with you. So like if we're looking at just the general project, having that 2,000 gives us a certain number of homes that are likely to hit that. And then 1,000 is another number of homes. And so it was just a demarcation in what we were looking at.
Okay.
Yep.
My next thing's on the electricity part of it. What utility company are you connecting to?
So this is the Duke Energy's line.
Okay. Do you have any agreements in place right now with that company or MISO?
We are working with MISO. We are in the MISO queue. We don't have an interconnection agreement yet. We're working through their process. So the interconnection queue is where you get in line to hook to the grid.
Oh, I
So-
understand all that.
Oh, I was just making sure everybody knew. I figured you did. But that's, as far as like having a power purchase agreement, we don't have one of those yet. We're too early in the interconnection process to really be able to confidently say how much it's going to cost. So it would be very difficult for us to agree to a price yet without knowing the total capital expenditure that we're going to need to do to build it.
Okay, so then you don't have a project number yet with MISO?
Yeah, we have a project number.
Can you give it to me?
Oh, of course, yeah. 3144 and 3145.
3144.
Yes.
What's the last one?
Oh, it's
I'm
J-
a slow person.
J3144 and J3145.
J?
Yep, 3144. And then there's there's two queue positions. They're 150 megawatts apiece. And so the two of them together make the 300. So it's J3144 and J3145. They're both 150 megawatt positions.
Okay. Then, on the fire protection, what have you guys' plans to come up with the fire protection for this?
Sure. So we have talked with the fire chiefs. We've had a meeting with them just to let them know that we have an expert that would be working with them, with ESRG is the company. We just wanted to make sure that they knew the company that if this goes through, that who they will be working with. And so there will be a fire safety plan that will be put together. And it will be, we'll make sure to get local input on that from Cloverdale, Greencastle, and other fire departments if they're interested in being part of that process. And then that will be something that's agreed to prior to us going for our permit. And then in our neighbor agreement, we are, because fire is something that has come up as a concern, we are going to do annual training for fire departments so that they can every year get the latest and greatest information on taking care of a solar project. So that is, we've committed to that already in our neighbor agreements. And so that is the plan. Did I forget anything?
No, that's
Okay.
perfect.
All right.
And also, so if there's special equipment needed, is your company going to fund and buy that, or is it's going to be the county's responsibility to buy it?
Yeah, if it comes up as a part of that fire plan that there's special equipment needed, then we would be the ones that would need to purchase it. We think the primary risk is a grass fire, if things got out of hand and got dry like it is right now. And so we have the equipment available to handle those sorts of things. It's really just, the training is important to know, to show folks where they can get in, where they can't, and to work together and coordinate to be able to shut power off to ensure safety. That's really important to make sure that it's safe for anybody responding.
Okay. My next question is, it's on the Putnam County Foundation, your donation to them. Okay. I know why you determined 2.4 million is because of the taxes that would be lost. Okay. Why are you going through the community foundation? Is it before you can get a better tax write-off? Because I know they're a 501(c) and you will not have to pay taxes on that 2.4 million. And also, why do you feel that you should go through there and not go through the county council and the county commissioners to distribute the money out?
We're open to any way. If you would prefer that we do a community benefits agreement through the county, we just wanted to come with a solution to this board, not necessarily the only solution. But we wanted to have it pre-solved for you and not just some loosey-goosey idea that we would do it. We wanted to have a commitment that we would do something. And I haven't actually checked to see if we would get a tax write-off on that or not.
Okay. Well, and two, the
next question pertains to these 425 emails I've received. Is the water quality and water safety. Okay, Cloverdale's wells there's 4 of them, and they're all within a mile of one of the solar fields. So how are you gonna regulate, check that, and make sure nothing happens?
Yeah, and
Because one point is, I did talk to the deputy commissioner of IDEM in the state of Indiana, and his name is Brian Wolf. I did talk to him, and he sent me a 126-page email on safety for solar and how they're supposed to be disposed of and stuff like that. And said his biggest concern is that all solar panels contain lead. And he said the worst problem is if a big storm comes through, then lead is escaped everywhere, and he goes, then that's going to be a big creation to be cleaned up.
yeah, nobody likes to drink bad water, right?
Yep.
Look at what happened to the folks up in Flint, Michigan. They were drinking lead in their water. That's terrible. And it warranted a quick response. So when we think about this, solar panels, the way they're designed, are designed to encapsulate that lead. And you're right, there's probably 30 grams of lead in the solder that hook the cells together. They're trying to get no lead solders, but it really isn't to avail, so we're kind of left with that. So the lead is kind of stuck in there. And the panels that we're looking at here, we have test sheets where they did a test, and this is the standard test for by the US EPA. They take all of the panels and crunch them up, and then they put them in glacial acetic acid and let them sit there. And then what they'll do, and they do this for anything. It's not just solar panels. It's any sort of hazardous waste that they want to test. They'll put them in there, let it sit, and then what they'll do is they'll test the effluent. So these panels here, there's about 40 different things: arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, selenium, and it goes on and on. There's a bunch of them.
It's all in my email, so I guess you can tell everybody else.
Yeah.
I thoroughly researched that. So.
Sure. So when the tests come back for these panels after they've been sitting in that vat of acid, you get, for cadmium, it's above the threshold. It's 0.008 milligrams per liter, and it needs to be less than 1 milligram per liter. So it's way less than that. Everything else is non-detectable except for lead, to your point, and it's 1.47 milligrams per liter. That's after sitting in acid, and to go through it, it's 5 milligrams per liter is the EPA standard for safety, and that's sort of what you would think that is like at the bottom of a landfill condition, where it's really nasty with something of an acid situation. In a farm field, you wouldn't have those acid conditions, so lead leaching would not be approaching anywhere near these levels, and would certainly be below the EPA levels for safety. Now, with water safety, this is a concern that I appreciate everyone bringing up, because it was something that would have eventually hit us, but it was, I'm going to be very honest with you, wasn't on our radar as far as, like, of course protecting water was, and we'd had conversations with folks about generally doing that, but the specifics of the well and the location caused us to do a little bit of research. And so I'm looking at a map here, and I don't think this map is really public data, so we would have to, we're not submitting it as public data because it's not. We could potentially get that from the town of Cloverdale. I know you can go online, and there's an online file where you can click around and see if you're in or not in the area, but we have it's called the Wellhead Protection Area, and they have 2 zones within that, generally the way that they work that. They have a 1-year time of travel where you're looking at contaminants could get into the aquifer, which is, in this case, it's a confined aquifer, and I think it's between 40 and 60 feet below ground. So when the water gets down to there, you have this zone that's kind of around those wellheads. It's a tight zone. It's kind of a bullseye. And then for the 5-year travel area, this is all mapped out, and we have that. We are, part of our signed parcels are within that, and I can show you which one here. It's going to be the parcel, actually no solar panels are going in this 5-year protection area, but it would be where the substation is, which is a concern, right? So you're going to have a transformer sitting there. So to address that, we've added another new commitment to our commitments that you'll find in your packet that we're going to agree to tonight, that we're committing to doing a water wellhead protection study to make sure that, to get ahead of this and answer this question unequivocally early on.
Okay. My next set of questions is concerning the panels themselves. Okay, so where's your source coming from for the source of the panels?
The panels that we're having right here is Canadian Solar.
Okay. So what origin is the parts created? What country or where does the parts come that's made into the panels?
Yeah, it's a very complicated situation right now when you're looking at this. Historically, and where most of the manufacturing was in China, and then there were tariffs put on China. So then it moved to Southeast Asia, and there's more tariffs there. And these are tariffs prior to the recent tariffs. These are tariffs from several years ago. This was a weird idiosyncratic case that's been the bane of our existence within the industry. But that's neither here nor there. So with that, we're looking at a lot of now the cells are going to be coming from India, and that's a big place. So that's where some of those are coming from. And then a lot of Canadian Solar has manufacturing final assembly facilities in the United States as well. So some of the final assembly could happen here. The parts will be kind of from all over the world. A lot of the aluminum will probably be sourced locally, but the actual cells themselves, we don't have a ton of it in the United States for sure, and it's likely that India will be the source, or at least a very likely. We don't have it nailed down specifically yet because we haven't bought our panels, so I'm being a little wishy-washy because there's a lot of different panels.
Okay. Also on that, I looked your companies up, Energy RE, 4-leaf solar, and I did read one thing in there that kind of caught me, and I just see if you have the answer for it. And it said that you guys sent $1 billion to an Asian country, and I'd just like to know what Asian country received the $1 billion.
I don't know what.
It's on their webpage. If you look it up, you can find it in there.
The Energy RE webpage?
On 4-leaf solar, because I looked up the company. It's in there.
Yeah. I wish they'd send me a little portion of that. Yeah.
Well, it stated it in there, because I looked up your CEO, your CFO, and your CEO, and if I'm remembering right, the CFO, I think he's from Spain, is that correct, or is he from Brazil? One's from Brazil, one's from Spain, and one's from the United States.
Portugal is the CFO. Our CEO is from Spain, and they both lived in Houston for a long time. And our chief operating officer sits in Indianapolis.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one. I apologize, I don't have an answer for you.
He asked my two questions, so, for now.
So I guess my first question might be more for us as a board. The agriculture district standards, the purpose is to retain the county's rural character, protecting farmlands and woodlands while limiting residential development. We're making this consideration. Can we infer that this would allow limited commercial and industrial development as well? On A1 rural preservation, it's established to protect suitable land for active agricultural production, recognized as an important economic activity in the county, and certain lands in particular suited for these uses because of their size, configuration, soil, topography, location, and relation to other land uses. Intended to preserve agricultural uses from the impacts of residential uses and other sensitive land uses. So I guess, can we infer that preservation of agricultural uses from impacts of residential would also include commercial industrial uses.
It's for the board.
And then, with the proposed rezone and anticipated development potentially cause harm or negative impact, or negatively impact the land and/or surrounding land. If this were to be developed, how would there be any potential negative impact on surrounding land? This is to be rezoned industrial.
Is that one for me? Okay, so the prior one was to the board?
And just for thought process.
Okay. Would you ask it again? Sorry, I thought you were asking the board still.
The proposed rezone and anticipated development potentially cause any harm or negative impact on the land or surrounding land if it's rezoned industrial.
So the question, I think we're seeking a rezone to natural resources.
Falls underneath the industrial umbrella.
Okay. So specifically, would it cause harm to other land?
Would the development potentially cause?
No, we don't have the rights to go on other land. We only have rights to be on our land itself. So I guess if you had a specific concern that you would want me to talk about, that,
This might be more for the mans themselves, maybe. Given the size and current use, would the requested parcels be best suited for agricultural or industrial development? Given the, actually, let's back that up and go, is this soil in general, is it high, low, or medium productivity?
this is a high productive soil.
High productivity soil?
Yeah.
So, given that this is high productivity soil, with current size and use, be best suited for agricultural or industrial development?
What we're looking to do is to merge the solar development and agriculture to preserve that agricultural heritage as you're talking about, specifically on these 2,000 acres. So taking that, the footprint of the actual foundations is a very small percentage. So something like industrial, like a steel mill or something, would be a complete conversion of the land, correct? So this is one where it's, you would think of this as a reversible situation. So clearly my view is that yes, there are things that go together, a solar farm and ag. And to me and my family, it's the biggest opportunity for us to get into agriculture because we don't have thousands of acres, which is what it would take, nor could we take on the debt to get into something like that. So having the solar panels, or solar panels generally, creates an agricultural opportunity that doesn't exist. And you look at the current situation in agriculture, I just saw numbers the other day that you're looking at, depending on how good of a crop you get, $100 to $300 of losses. This is a Purdue study that just came out. And that's including the cost of land. So if you got your land paid for, you might make a little. But we're overproducing corn fundamentally in this country right now. We've got too much land going that direction. Our exports to China have not really started for this year, for soybeans primarily. So we're in a little bit of a pickle, and solar is a way to be able to diversify that income. So you're going to get the least revenues, plus then it gives somebody a chance to get revenues off of the maintenance of the facility through either grazing or mowing. I love grazing, so that's what we're going to stick with here. But then you would also get the opportunity to raise, and we're talking 3 to 4 lambs an acre, so that's not nothing. If you raise 3 to 4 lambs an acre and you get 100, if you're better than me, maybe you get $200 a lamb out of them, that's significant revenue. And that all becomes income in this county that's taxed and becomes part of the tax base. I mean, if we want to get deep into taxes, what the commissioners are looking at is they're going to take that business personal property tax and they're going to have to fill those holes with local income tax. That's maybe not the only way, but that seems like a primary way. It's going to shift off of property and go to income.
natural resources defined as intended to accommodate intensive natural resource land uses that may be incompatible with other land types. Purpose of the district is to provide a protected district for uses such as mineral extraction, wind farm, and solar farms. No primary uses may be established within this district to promote compatibility between these intensive land uses and surrounding agricultural and residential uses. So would the rezone anticipated industrial development be compatible or incompatible with surrounding land types?
We feel like we're compatible, what we're proposing is compatible with surrounding land types. And we're not proposing mining. We actually have a commitment in there to not mine. We didn't make a commitment not to do wind turbines, but we can make that commitment too. We just didn't think about it.
With the 30-year plan, right? Is this the 30-year lease?
Yes.
So if the 30-year lease, would the rezone cause harm to future potential development around the area? Would it potentially restrict potential housing? And if we rezone this all industrial, natural resource, anything around that, I'm going to probably assume won't have to be industrial or commercial to be compatible with that.
I mean, I think as I spoke earlier, we are developing a solar farm adjacent to our house where we live currently, and we have another parcel where we would build a house right next to the solar farm. So I think that it is a compatible use, and we've seen folks build houses right next to solar farms. So I don't think it would curtail people building houses adjacent.
Under the solar energy conservation system, so we'd be a large scale. You will have a buffering plan for non-participating properties within 250 feet of the solar array.
That's right.
Now, that for every house within 250 feet of the solar array, or will you be seeking some waivers so you can build arrays closer to the house?
We won't be seeking waivers.
How tall will these solar panels be at full tilt?
At full tilt, you're looking, and the panels have some variance in size, and they're getting close to the size of a sheet of plywood now. But you're looking full tilt, the actual apparatus, like where they tilt upon, the rack, is about chest high, and then the panel will be another 4 feet, so no more than 8, certainly less than 10 feet.
And even at full tilt, that'll give the use plenty of ground clearance to feed and everything?
Yep.
I'm not a sheep farmer like my colleague here.
Yeah, they do a great job. They can get in and out. If there's particularly tasty things under, they'll get anywhere. Some of the earlier arrays were closer to the ground, and they would crawl under and get there. These are all, they're tilting, single-axis tilting panels as opposed to the fixed ones. So they've got plenty of room to get under them.
What I was trying to get to earlier, the ground cover should be diverse seed mix of native species specific to local area. And it should, come on, to the maximum extent feasible for site conditions, ground cover should be a diverse seed mix. And that's underneath the solar panels, but you said you're doing just a seed or a grass mix?
Yeah,
Because underneath according to this, you should do everything you can to make sure it is a native seed mix.
Yeah, and I don't,
Underneath the panels.
We'll have some native plants within that seed mix, but you really, and this is one where I've pined over this, this actual issue. Early on, I wanted to figure out a native seed mix that would work well, but unfortunately, the native grasses here are things like big blue stem, little blue stem. They don't really match up well with the solar farm because those are summer grasses, and they need to get super tall to finish out. So really what we're looking at is something more of a naturalized system and what you would think of as pasture. A very diverse mix of pasture grasses and clovers and some of the flowers. I think that one of the industry standards is that fuzz and buzz mix I mentioned earlier. The American Solar Grazing Association, that's their sort of go-to mix. And there's two levels of that. You can have like the basic level and then the premium level. And the premium level includes many more of the forbs, which you're thinking of like flowers. They would have more of those, and you could increase the natives a little bit. But at the end of the day, you need a vegetation that's going to be able to handle 9 grazings a year and stand up to that. And you want it to stay short because at the end of the day, pollinators are wonderful, and we'll have maybe some of those around the edges outside of the solar farms. We're totally interested in that. Kind of nerds about it a little bit. But within the solar array, we want something that stays low to mitigate the fire risk. We want to keep that down and vegetative.
You're supposed, as an owner-operator, must maintain good ground cover by removing invasive or noxious plant species. Do you or will you have a plant plan for that?
We would, yes, that would be a part of it. Yeah, certain plants that are weeds in a cornfield are food for a sheep. So, but there are some that are not, and they become noxious. Like you wouldn't want to let Canadian thistle get a hold, right? Particularly not around the edges. And I think the other one I heard about is horse nettle. Is that one that people hate? Yes. So things like that we'd want to keep a handle on. But we would definitely keep a handle on invasives and noxious weeds. Yeah, the sheep won't eat them, they get in the solar panels.
Touching back on fencing, you said there's going to be an outer fence and then the inner fence to keep, which would be over 6 foot tall. I'm assuming that's going to be wire fence.
So there's no firm designs yet, but the concept is that the outer fence would be a high tensile fence, you know, something to keep the coyotes out. I found that electric fence works better than other fence. It's almost impenetrable to them. It's great. And then on the inside fence, it needs to meet the National Electric Code. But I've seen that done with regular ag fencing. It just has to be 6 feet tall.
Now, would like small game be able to get in there and do what small game, specifically rabbits, do?
Yeah, rabbits would be able to get in and out.
If they get in there, your predators, your coyotes won't be able to help control the population. What plans would there be to help control the rabbit population if they were to stay within the fence?
I think that would be a key part of our biology, our wildlife study that we would look at. But kind of, I mean, and my farm's not probably big enough, but we have rabbits on the inside, and we're not overrun with rabbits. It's just sort of like a normal amount of them. And
We're talking 30 years of
that's true.
no hunting.
Yeah, you would have aerial predators that would come get them too. So you do have the coyotes are kind of locked out, but the raptors would be a piece of that. So, but we could definitely take a look at that and think about those guys.
Given the size of this and how expansive the whole operation is, how will this impact migration patterns? Whether it's north and south, east, west for deer. I know deer have long patterns, coyotes. How will they move back and forth, east, west, or south.
Yeah, we'll want to add that to the list on the wildlife study too. I think a key thing to think about here is that some of the corridors here that you would generally think that those critters would use, those creeks and stuff, what they're probably using now for the most part, we're not cutting those down. We're going to keep those intact. So those wildlife corridors will stay. And as far as like going through the solar farm, they won't be able to do that. But those other wooded corridors will stay intact.
So do you think they'll be forced to go across on the roads more than what they do now?
I mean, they already cross a lot, don't they? So I would say that we would want to look at that in more detail. And if we saw some sort of major issue, that's something that we would think about how to mitigate that.
Living in Cloverdale, I've learned a lot about fence laws lately. Given the ewes will be kept on property, just so everybody knows, will this force neighbors to abide by the Indiana fence laws?
Not with us. We're going to, the fences won't be set on property lines, so there will be no issue of folks having to pay for their right-hand side. Even on my farm, I set the fence in 10 feet from the edge because I just feel like it's neighborly not to go ask them for that. But I'm not going to try to offend anyone here who is a fierce supporter of the fence laws, because I know there are some. So I'm going to stay out of that debate. I just keep mine 10 feet in. And these would not be subject to that.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yep. That would be very expensive.
Now, the UDO does have a glare requirement. Can you tell us more about the PV, I have it noted here, PV, whatever, the low glare?
There is a glare requirement. We have to minimize glare. So we will be, as a part of when we put our application together, there'll be a study that goes through that. I mean, at a high level, glare is not a super big issue. I mean, look at, they're at the end of the Indianapolis airport, so right at the end of the runway, because the panels are designed to absorb the sun.
Can you elaborate more on like the PV models use non-reflective glass that are designed to absorb light, not reflect it? So it's, what am I trying to ask? There won't be any severe reflection and glare coming off of that, right?
We would expect there not to be, but we'll run a study and see if there is some isolated cases where that would be the case. That's a part of the requirements.
Given this is located between Cloverdale and city of Indianapolis, is there any potential signal interference for like over-the-air antennas, radio, anything like that? Any signal ones, right?
No.
No. Sound. How is the average hourly sound level weighted and calculated? That might be a research question.
Sound levels can only be calculated with a decibel meter that the county doesn't have, so it would have to be done through another company.
What is the highest decibel anticipated with this?
The threshold is 50, right? It'd be far below that. So the key thing that's going to make sound on the project will be there'll be inverters and transformers that'll be spaced throughout. And the project, so there'll be, actually can't remember the total number off the top of my head, it varies by design, but those are the things where you'll hear, there could be a little bit of humming. Just think of them like a transformer, like a small-ish transformer like you would see at maybe maybe a little bit bigger than Walmart type of thing out in the parking lot. So that's the kind of hum you would get. And as you walk away from it, and I was just touring a solar farm recently and took a video of that. You could hear it pretty good when you're right next to it, of course. And then as you walk and you get to 200 feet away, you really can't hear it at all. You're hearing the wind rustling through, that sort of thing. So I think as a key part of design, we want to make sure that those are set into the middle of the solar farm. Not like dead center, but certainly inside. The other noise will be at the substation, which we'll want to study more deeply once we have all of the details for the transformer and so forth. Just like normal substations, it's like a normal substation.
Is that humming constant, or is that just while the panels are active and generating electricity?
That's an excellent question. I've never been out there at night. But I think that what you would see is the humming would increase as there's more power running through it. So I'm sure that there's a little bit like fans or something whirring at night because they're on, but it would increase as the production went higher.
Do we know what type of foundations going to be installed for the racking and support?
We know right now our base assumption is that there'll be I-beams because that's more or less the industry standard. There are a few other ones like screw piles that are coming into play and some novel ones like that. We have not done geotech work, so within our current assumptions is that a significant portion of these are going to need to be drilled out for those because there could be some limestone there. So those would have the pile then set into limestone.
So there won't be any cement
You only need like a cement or a grout to fill if you're going into limestone. You don't need it if you're driving in. It's just like a fence post, a driven fence post. The strength of the foundation is the stickiness of the soil to the I-beam itself.
So if we were to have like a direct hit a tornado, how do these things not become kites?
Yeah, if they get hit directly by a tornado, then it's just like anything else. You know, you typically don't see, so is your question like pulling the foundations out? Yeah. Okay. The foundation is much, much stronger than the panel itself. So the panels and the connections of the panels, every tornado instance I've seen of that, the panels get ripped off. Yep. So a direct hit from a tornado is going to do that, just like it would do to a barn or anything else.
Substations, switchyards, I think you didn't know how many you were planning quite yet. Do you have?
We'll have one switchyard and one substation. I think we're in if I'm going from memory here, 60 or so inverters. But that can change. There's different models.
Do you kind of have an idea of where you're looking at putting those at the moment? Maybe not the inverters, but
the substation? Yeah, it'll be right on, yeah. Emily will show you on the map.
And then on the decommissioning, have we figured out what your initial cost estimates are on the decommissioning?
We haven't started that yet. You need to really get to the point of final design, which would be the next phase of this as we go for our permit, like our actual permit. But as a rule of thumb, what you're looking at, and this is just a rule of thumb, $50,000 a megawatt. And that really is site specific, but that's kind of a range around that. So if you're just trying to make a guesstimate, so it'd be about $15 million is a good kind of ballpark figure for the decommissioning. But don't hold me to that. That'll be actually calculated by an engineer.
So would we be estimating that in today's dollars or escalating that at 2-3% for 30 years and then doing that on the future value of the decommissioning?
So when we look at it every 5 years, we would be looking at it within that 5-year period and what it would cost to decommission it then. And then you adjust the bond over those increments, those time increments, and to kind of hit that period which you're looking at decommissioning within.
The project would be considered abandoned if electricity is produced for 18 consecutive months. Who and how is electricity production monitored?
Yeah, we actually monitor it right at a meter there. So I think it would be one of those things where, that's an interesting point because there's no mechanism to like, we're not sending a report of like annual production going over there. So that is an interesting thing to think about how we get that over. But there is a report that goes to the Energy Information, it's the EIA, Energy Information Administration. So there would be a production report that could be procured that would show how much we produced in a year. Or we would be glad to hand that over. We just haven't solved that yet. This is kind of serial number 1, but we'd be happy to give annual production numbers.
So it looked like there was going to be permanent water lines put in to water the U's. What's that water source? Is there enough wells out there? Will you have to drill wells? Will those be part, any watering systems installed? Will that be part of the decommissioning, or will they want to be left out there?
Those are all questions to be answered, and they're very good questions. I think in some cases, there's wells existing out there. Potentially, we could work with the town of Cloverdale if it's close enough in some instances. And there's various other sources of water. As far as decommissioning the lines, we haven't spoken specifically about pulling those out. I would think that you would want to bury them more than 3 feet, and it would be more of a disturbance to pull them out. Some of like the water access points, you may want to decommission, pull those out and refill it, because if you were going to go back to row crop production, you wouldn't want to get your tires stuck in them. So, but like those are like pipes that are down on the ground so you can connect where it doesn't freeze. But for the most part, you would leave the water lines underground.
We're talking 3,000 to 4,000 head of you, right? Is there going to be adequate veterinary services to absorb that around here?
Yeah, we hope so. So at actually, this is a fun thing. Tomorrow we've got at least 3 students. I don't know the freshmen yet. This is our first time we're going to do it this year. We have the Franklin College pre-vet team come out. And so far we've been doing this for 5 years. We've had about 6 folks go through that and learn about sheep. And now several of them are at Purdue. We've got one at Michigan.